I made a pact with my own soul because I really didn't want to end up being a vegetable or being in a situation where I didn't have any like conscious awareness anymore or something like that. That was a huge fear of mine. That was when like really talked to my soul for the first time in that way. I was spiritually interested before the surgery, but that was the first time where I really could feel that connection with something that is so much larger than my human self, and I could feel that presence, and I could feel that part of me communicating with me and telling me, yes, you have the power to decide that you are either going to come out of this better, feeling better and being more healthy, or you are not going to come out of it alive.
I want to welcome you to Identity Evolution, the podcast where we explore the moments that shape who we become. I'm your host, Lorena Schuth, somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I'm here to guide you through the raw and the real and the transformative stories of reinvention. I am beyond excited to share an incredible conversation and story with and by Isabelle Gloria. Her story is one of the most profound ones I've ever heard. At a really young age, she had not one, but 3 near-death experiences. And today she shares what happened and how these experiences opened her awareness, triggered a profound and rapid spiritual awakening, and brought her into her purpose and spiritual mission here on Earth. Isabelle didn't just recover from a lot of health issues, something opened for her. And this episode will absolutely make you feel that a better world than the one you're maybe told exists is here for us. And all of us get to create it. This was so much fun to record. I definitely want to have her back at some point as well, and truly enjoy this because there's so much gold in this one. Hi, Isabelle.
Hi, Lorena. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you're here today. We've obviously known each other for a few years now through a coaching container that we were both in. But what I really love about your work and your online presence, like I feel like everyone who's not following you, which I think is unlikely as it is, I feel like a lot of my audience is actually following you. I always see like people who follow you, who I know. But what I love so much about your work is that it's so different from mine, but really complementary. I feel like my work is very like in the lower chakras, and you like get people through the rest. So it's like really beautiful. So I'm really excited to chat with you today about your story.
I'm so excited as well.
Beautiful. So yeah, you've got a very powerful story. You had a near-death experience, and as far as I understand, it also kind of led you into your spiritual journey as it is now.
Totally.
So I would love to start with the before, like before that whole experience happened. What was your life like before your near-death experience? Like, how old were you? Where were you at in life? What did it look like?
So I was not very old because the first near-death experience I had was when I was a baby. I was born with a heart defect, so it's like a thing that you are born with, obviously. And for the first couple of days, everything looked okay. The doctors thought I was a completely healthy baby, and then my situation changed really quickly. So I'm just gonna jump straight in because that's how I came into this life. I just jumped straight into the challenges, I guess. So yeah, a couple of days later, they realized something's very wrong, and they couldn't figure out what it was. They realized, okay, something's wrong with her heart, but it wasn't out of the book condition that they could diagnose that easily. So I had to be transferred to another clinic that specializes on children's heart health. And I was yeah, in a very bad condition because they couldn't really help me. And I first had to get there. And on the way there, in the ambulance car, I flatlined for the first time in my life. So that was technically my first near death experience. But because I was so small, I didn't remember anything after that. It came later in life. We can talk about that later. It kind of
Mm.
comes together as we talk about the story. But yeah, that was my first near death experience that I wasn't really aware of because I was a baby. And my life before the ones that I was aware of was just that and I feel like that is connected to that very early on experience. I always was
Mm.
interested in the big questions like, why are we here? What is the
Yeah.
meaning of life? What is out there? Like, it sounds so cliche, but I really was a child pondering about these questions. And in my early teens, I also got into like the esoteric stuff and like very basic level, just like learning about spirituality and on a very basic level. But I always had that interest. But yeah,
Mm.
before that, I wasn't really diving into like the real deep transformational work. I was more like just interested in. I was curious, and I had this itch to know more and to surround myself with that kind of mystic energy.
Yeah. So interesting for me to hear as well. I mean, first of all, you had multiple near-death experiences. Okay, we'll get into that. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting for me to hear about kind of how your spirituality started or like your spiritual connection started because I relate a lot to that. I was
Hmm.
kind of the same as a child. I remember I was like 4 years old and asking my grandma, Grandma, what comes after death? Who's God? Like asking questions like this. And the adults around me had no answers, right? Either it
Hmm.
was like a very Christian mindset or it was like no connection at all. And for me, I actually lost my spirituality throughout the years because I couldn't find answers. And so I went completely the other direction and was like, okay, now I'm an atheist. I don't believe in anything. And it
Hmm.
took me time to rediscover that. So it's interesting to hear that, you had this natural curiosity. Do you think that your, near death experience during infancy played into that? Or do you think that was just something that was naturally inside of you from, just maybe a memory from
Hmm.
before you came into this world?
I do feel like looking back and reflecting on everything that happened after that we are going to talk about, I do feel like it had like it there is a purpose in that. I don't believe something like that happens for no reason or for like a coincidental reason. I even go as far as believing that you choose the medical condition you come in because I know so many people who are like such deep people, amazing people, and they do such transformative work, and almost all of them struggle in some area of their lives, and often it's health related. It's something
Mm.
that they go through as an initiation to grow into the person that can hold such mission that they came here to fulfill. So I do feel like it was all like setting me up for this path, and it was naturally just leading me where I needed to be. And that also counts for the other experiences that came after that. I don't believe in coincidences. I really think that is a very disempowering state of mind to think things just happen to you without any reason or without any purpose. And it's also, I know that a lot of people are getting triggered by people saying that, like, you choose your experiences, or you have soul choices that you would normally not choose on a human level. But I think it depends on how you look at that and how your perspective on that is, because if you feel like the victim of your circumstances and of the things that happen to you, it's okay to get triggered by that. I understand that from a human perspective, but if you are capable of moving beyond the humanness of things and believe, or um, have that deeper connection to your soul, you begin to understand that some choices that are made on a soul level are not what you would essentially choose as a human, but in the end they are making you who you are, and they are fulfilling a purpose to have a certain experience in this life.
Yeah.
It's such an expansive topic, like, it's a very large topic to talk about, but yeah, sh
Yeah.
long story short, I don't really believe in coincidences, and I think life and the big challenges, the big initiative experiences are setting you up for whatever is coming or whatever you're meant to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that perspective, and I agree. It's very empowering. I don't believe in coincidences
Mm.
either. And I, like this entire podcast is about how specific experiences, modalities, decisions shaped people's identities. And from the interviews I've done so far, I can tell you pretty much all of them had some significant trauma or
Mhm.
some significant, like, harsh experience that we would never choose
Mhm.
consciously from an ego perspective. But I agree with you. It's when I always like to think like we can also learn the same lessons through love, but it's much faster through pain and challenge. Like we,
Yeah.
because we're forced into the initiation. So it's I also understand though the side of, like needing to be careful with how we phrase these things. And that's kind of also what I meant in the beginning when I spoke about how I feel like your work and my work is so complementary in terms of the lenses we look at things through. Because I feel like if people look at your work and my work, sometimes they might think it's contradictory on the
Mhm.
surface level, like because I'm so much like body nervous system and you're so much, more in the ethos and like the spiritual mission. But actually, like I agree with everything you say. It's just a different perspective and focus. And yeah, sometimes it's just about how we interpret things as well and what lens we look at it from. If we look at what you just stated from a very human, trauma informed lens, then people are going to get triggered. But
Mhm.
when we look at that from the larger scale of what we're here to do and who we really are and our soul, then it's the only answer that really makes sense.
Absolutely. And I feel like what you're so good at is to bring it into like tangible form, like the
Mhm.
embodiment of that identity shift. And it really depends on what your mission, I like to call it a mission on earth here is, because we could talk about the same things, like we two could stand in a room and
Mhm.
talk about the exact same topic, and a couple of people will resonate more with your version or your perspective, and a couple of people will resonate more with mine. And I think that's so beautiful about like being able to share from these different perspectives, because in the end we both, and all the other people who are having like pure intentions and have this heartfelt energy behind it, we all just want to make people feel better and make the world a better place. And we need different teachers, different lenses, different perspectives, and also things we don't resonate with, so we can find the
Mhm.
ones we do resonate with. It's such
Yeah,
a huge thing.
yeah, and I think it's really beautiful, and I love that about your work a lot as well, that you kind of help people step into what's, unique for them. So, but we're gonna get into that like later on. So you had multiple near-death experiences, correct? So how, before we get into the experiences themselves, how many did you have? Just so I have like a bit of a picture.
I had three. I had the one that was happening right after, like a couple of days after I was born.
Mhm.
Um, I had one when I was 9 or 10. I can't remember exactly, but I underwent a heart surgery. It was not an open heart surgery. It was like a more minor, if you can say that, a minor
Right.
heart surgery. And then the last one was me going into open heart surgery. This was not like an accidental near death experience. It
Mhm.
was like an induced one.
Wow.
But yeah, I would count it in there too, because it
Mhm.
really, like, the open heart surgery was the event that really opened up the channels for me and lifted the cosmic veil, and it made all sense in hindsight. So I would count that in, even though it wasn't dangerous, or like it didn't happen on accident. It was medically induced, and it was part of the plan. Let's put it like that. But I would count it in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course, because it's still a near-death
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. Okay, so let's put this into like two chapters then, because I would love to know a little bit, because so much of your work is about purpose, right? And spiritual mission. How would you say your relationship with your body, your life, and your sense of purpose were before each of the near death experiences that you remember? Of course, not the baby one.
Hmm.
So before this happened, like what was going on when you thought about what your purpose was, or also like what your relationship with yourself and with your life was?
Hmm. I think I'm gonna answer that in two parts to
Mhm.
really cover everything. Um, the purpose thing was that I always felt like I had something to do here. And that
Mm.
started really early on. I was always looking for I translated that into a business, so I was always looking for the thing that would fulfill me because I
Mhm.
could deep down I felt like, okay, I need to do something that will fulfill me. And back then I thought it was like a certain job or a certain position or working for myself or something like that. And yeah, it's part of it now, but it's not the whole picture. But back then, I thought that would be the thing, and
Mm.
I was always looking for something. Like when I was very young, I was crafting stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the street and set up a little booth and sell these things that I just crafted, like little stuff like that. I always had this intrinsic drive to find my purpose, and I was actively looking for it. By the age I was 19, I already had started a business in design. I was doing freelance work in design, and yeah, like little projects here and there. I did so many things because I was actively looking for my purpose because I always had that feeling of I really need to find it. There is something calling me, and I really want to get out of this even though I wasn't even in a 9 to 5 back then, I was still in school. I was like, I cannot end up there. I cannot do this. I cannot,
Mm.
I don't want it. I don't want that. I always kind of knew that I was not meant for this. And I always had this awareness that I need to actively go look for that thing that will fulfill me. It will not just happen. I felt like this drive to really go look for it and try out new things and really find it, even though I had no clarity around it and I was looking in the wrong areas of life. But looking back, it wasn't wrong. It was just like a way to gain experiences for what I can implement now. Like everything I've done, everything I've learned is still helpful now, even though it has
Mhm.
nothing to do or not much to do with what I do today.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that in the manifestation world. We call this the bridge of incidents,
Oh,
where you kind of,
is that a
sometimes,
thing?
yeah, so it's basically the bridge of incidents. That whole concept is about when you're manifesting something, you set an intention towards something, you're holding a vision, and you're embodying the state of being that aligns with that vision. There are certain things that need to happen in order for that to come true, right?
Hmm.
So when we talk about, and I have the same, like I'm only able to do the work I do now because I had the jobs I had before, but they at the moment that I was in them, they felt like a detour or like the wrong
Yeah.
path, but they were actually necessary for me to get here. So we can often only see how that bridge made sense to unfold in the way it did in hindsight. But like when we're in it, we feel like, ugh, I don't want to be here. I don't like this.
I fully resonate with that. That's how I always felt when I tried something new and it wasn't the thing I really that would fulfill me. I was like looking so hard and I couldn't find it. And over time, the puzzle pieces started to fit into each other. And yeah, it guided me to where I am. But before those experiences, it was really much like I was in constant searching, in
Mm,
constant searching mode. And looking for something that would fulfill me, but not on a financial or like human level. It was more than that. I just couldn't imagine spending my life doing something that I'm not 100% passionate about and that my heart is not part of. That was a
yeah.
horrible vision to have, to just like be in a normal 9 to 5 and do all these human steps. And it's beautiful if you love them. Like, I'm not bashing anyone who has those classic, like, get married, have children, and all of that. But that was never my path. That was never what called me. And I think those can coexist. But for me personally, I was very mission driven since I can
Yeah.
think of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really powerful to have that. It's almost like on one hand you were really lost because you knew that there was something missing and you were seeking for it and you didn't really know what it was or how to find it. But on the other hand, there's also this beautiful clarity that you had. Like so many people don't like they have a vision somewhere in their soul, somewhere in their body, but they kind of shut it all down and they don't even try to connect to it because their path is just laid out for them and they just I was just thinking this morning, I had a bit of a cry this morning and I was like, as you do. And I was just like asking myself, like, what am I actually afraid of? What is the fear
Hmm.
I'm sitting with here? And I had this very clear answer come through is I don't want to live a mediocre life.
Yeah.
I don't want that. And that kind of reminded me, when you shared that drive towards like a
Hmm.
great purpose or a vision, even if you didn't know what it was at the time or how it would physically manifest.
Yeah, you worded that perfectly. The thought of having a mediocre life was terrifying, and terrifying enough to do all kinds of things to just figure out how to avoid it. That was, yeah, you worded that perfectly. I really resonate
Aw.
with that.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go into the experience or the experiences themselves. So then we can dive a bit deeper into what you're doing here now and how you integrated all of this. So you had two significant, I mean, three experiences, but two where you will remember some of the before at least. What I would love to know is what kind of happened in the lead up to these near death experiences. The first one, was not planned, but the second one was kind of planned almost because it was an intentional
Hmm.
operation or a surgery. What was happening for you spiritually before then, or also emotionally? And I would also love to know if there were any, since you were already a bit tuned in, right? Like, were there any signs or premonitions or moments that hinted that something was coming for you?
Hmm. So I feel like I have to tell this story from like the other way around, starting with the
Okay.
open heart surgery, because
Mm-hmm.
that was really the event that made me remember all of the other stuff. So I had this surgery in when I was 19. So it was in 2011 on the 3rd March. So 3rd 11 on
Funny.
yeah, it's like numerology, angel numbers. Funny little
Can't make this shit up.
funny little side note. It was on the 3rd March of 2011, and I obviously it was a scheduled surgery, so I knew it's gonna happen. And for context, I grew up knowing that at one point I will have to have surgery.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt here. Were you afraid of that? Like knowing that this is going to happen at some point?
It didn't feel real until it was scheduled. So I always knew, and I grew up with that thought of, okay, when I'm like a young adult, that was what the doctor said. When you're a young adult, at one point, you will have to have a big open heart surgery. And it didn't feel real until it became an urgent topic. So I was really
Mm,
good at not like letting myself um, be influenced by it too much or held back by it, but it was in the back of my mind. And it felt far away for as long as it wasn't there. But when it
yeah.
happened, it was like, oh my God, like this is coming now. And I have to say, it was emotionally very, very intense before that. I wasn't in a state of panic or anything like that because I grew up with knowing that it will come. So I had years and years and years of like getting warm with that thought of that of me having to go through this. But
Mm,
what was challenging was that my condition is not very out of the books. It's a very rare heart condition that is also usually very severe. So if you see me here, I don't look very ill, I would assume.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
that's a little bit of a miracle because people with the severity of the degree that I have, most of them are in wheelchairs. Most of them are like very, very visibly sick and just chronically ill. And I do have my health scares. I do have my challenges. And I learned to be strong and suck it up. And I'm aware that people don't really notice this about me, and some people even don't believe me. Like I have this theme coming up again and again where people think that when I talk about it, when I talk about being chronically ill, or when I share about this story or about this, like my health condition, that I'm
Mm,
like over dramatic because I'm so good at not showing how challenging it can be. I'm just like,
mhm,
I have this little bit of like this strong barrier that I've grown into, and I know that people tend to underestimate how severe of a condition it is. So, long story short, I feel like that was the context you needed to, or everyone needed to, understand why it was challenging to get this surgery. So there wasn't in the clinic that I was supposed to have that surgery. There wasn't a surgeon that could perform this surgery. So they
mm,
started to send out letters to different clinics all over Germany and I think even Switzerland, asking for a surgeon that would take on this case. And I ended up going to Berlin. So I'm living in the south of Germany. So I went all the way to Berlin to have this surgery by one of the best surgeons. Like it was not really sure if he would even do it because he usually doesn't perform surgeries on normal people like me. So it was all connected with a lot of fear of not getting that surgery. That was the first
mm,
initiation. Like I was scared that I wouldn't get the medical help or wouldn't be able to. Like obviously they wanted to help me, but it wasn't just like going in there and getting the surgery and then recovering. There was this whole stress about is it going to work out? Is my insurance going to cover it? Like how is it going to work? And
mm.
that alone created the desire in me to finally have that surgery. So I feel like
Yeah.
in hindsight, it was a good thing because I really wanted the surgery because I know I needed it. And it was so hard to even get it and to find the right person who could do it and who could successfully perform it on me, that I almost was like longing for that appointment to be scheduled in. So it
Mm,
was this two-sided thing of, yeah, I really want this now because I know how much I need it. I also was in a very bad medical condition at that point. I couldn't even walk up the stairs in my house anymore without being completely out of breath. And the weeks leading up to the appointment, when I finally had the date, I was doing so much shadow work, and I didn't even I hadn't even heard the term shadow work at that point. So I was
yeah.
doing a lot of shadow work, and I was researching, and I was reading other people's experiences having similar surgeries. I was looking up how exactly they're gonna do it. I was like, I'm the type of person, if I'm going through something, I really want to know every detail. Like, I will look up the operation video and watch it because I really wanted to know. So I was looking at the graphic stuff, and that was my way of preparing myself, though. It was my way of shadow work. Looking back, I realized that was my way of really facing it and facing my fears, and also taking that little power that I had over the situation. And that power was to know exactly how it's going to be performed, what it looks like even if it's gory, even if I like get scared by it, I really wanted to know. And my family was like joking even now they are joking around like, you really need to know the details. You're like, who does that? Who looks up operation videos of the surgery that's going to be performed on you? And that was my way of dealing with things. I was doing shadow work in my own way without knowing that I was doing shadow work. I didn't have the tools and like the transformative practices that I would do now to prepare myself for it, but that was my way of doing it. So emotionally, it was a lot of crying, a lot of fear, but also curiosity and looking forward to that because I knew this was my only chance to really feel better. And I also had a really clear direction from the medical team, it wasn't really sure if I was going to come out that surgery better, if I was going to come out at all, like alive at all, or if it's going to turn out good and I will feel better. And spoiler alert, it turned out good, so I'm really, really grateful for that experience. But that was also hard to hear, to just know, okay, you are going to go in on that date and you don't know what condition you will come out of that surgery. So when I had to process that and internalize this thought and really work with that, I made a pact with my own soul, because I really didn't want to end up being a vegetable, or being in a situation where I didn't have any like conscious awareness anymore or something like that. That was a huge, huge, huge fear of mine. And that was when I like really talked to my soul for the first time in that way. I was spiritually interested before the surgery. Like I said, like the very superficial stuff. You love the oracle cards and like all the aesthetics of it and stuff like that. But that was the first time where I really, really could feel that connection with something that is so much larger than my human self. And I could feel that presence, and I could feel that part of me communicating with me and telling me, yes, you have the power to decide that you are either going to come out of this better, feeling better and being more healthy, or you are not going to come out of it alive, because that was what I wanted. I didn't want the in between of just being on a ventilator, and like that was an option. It was a real scenario that could have happened, and I didn't want that. And it felt very empowering to make that soul decision, because I could really feel that this would turn out this way. I didn't have choice over if it was going to be that or that, but I felt some safety in that. And it was a very like key moment for me, where I realized there is something beyond who I think I am, and there is something larger that I can connect with, that I almost have this plan with, because like I said in the beginning, and like we both agreed on, we don't really believe in coincidences. So I could feel like this whole soul plan of this experience, and it gave me a lot of peace, because I had a good feeling about it then. I had a really good feeling about it, and I knew nothing that I wouldn't be able to deal with was going to happen. Yeah.
Wow. That's like, I did not want to even make a single noise here because that was such a powerful, yeah, that was so powerful to hear. And I also think it's so interesting, this contrast of you really prepared with like the knowledge, like trying to figure everything
Mhm.
out. And I feel like that's something from what you shared thus far that's kind of been in you all the time, even the spiritual seeking, the seeking for a purpose. That's like a thirst. That's like a curiosity, right? That's like a thirst for knowledge and understanding. And then you're in this experience where, yes, you spoke with your soul, and yes, you connected with God, the divine consciousness, whatever we want to call it. I don't know what you call it, actually. What do you call it?
The cosmic self. I call it the
I
cosmic
love it.
self.
Trademarked. Yeah. um, yeah, so you did that, but ultimately, this was the deepest surrender
Mhm.
that you never imagined, because there was so much uncertainty there. You're really like giving it all up to something greater than you. And that can be scary as fuck. So it's so powerful to hear how you just made a pact with your own soul, and it made you feel, soothed
Mhm.
and positive about it, because you could have gone into this just shit scared and nothing else, but you weren't spiraling because you took that power back for yourself, and you chose to trust. That's so powerful.
Yes. Yes, I chose to trust. That's a beautiful way of saying it. And I feel like that was my personal moment of welcoming that kind of guidance, that spiritual guidance into my life. And it also has to do with me having all these memories after the surgery, what I'm going to share as well in a
Yeah.
moment. But I feel like that was all connected. If I would have gone into this surgery with a different mindset, or with like in a different state, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And maybe it would have turned out just as fine, but I'm not sure if I would have had this intense spiritual awakening afterwards. I feel like that was the first symptom of me really connecting with something beyond my human self, and with me going that onto that path of awakening.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and I think it kind of speaks to what you shared in the beginning, that you think the path is kind of laid out and everything kind of does have a purpose, and we choose it before we come here, because you had this inkling the entire time, and this was just what opened it up. But this has always been in you, but it just brought it out to bloom. So this was always meant to be your path, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can you share about the actual experience? Like, what happened during the experience? What did you encounter? You said you had quite a lot of realizations and memories come back to you after. Can you speak to all of that a little bit?
Yes, of course. So the first, or like, let's not count in the one when I was a baby. So the
Yeah.
one when I was 9 or 10 years old. I had to undergo a surgery as well, but it wasn't open heart surgery. It was a minor surgery where they go with like I don't know how you would call it in English. It's like a tube that goes through the veins to the heart. So it's minimal invasive. It's not that risky. It's still
It's still a bit
yeah,
hard,
a
but
hard thing. It's always kind of serious, but it's not nothing like majorly. But what happened there is that my heart stopped beating for a moment, which is expected during a surgery like this because they work directly on the heart. So it sometimes gets irritated and it gets out of sync. So it's not a like medically it's not a major thing when that happens in such situation because they're so close to the heart that it can give immediate impulses, like little impulses to make it go back into rhythm. So medically that wasn't really a dangerous situation or anything like that. They had it under control, but still it was like a very intense experience on a spiritual level because it was a near death experience. My heart stopped beating, and they had like a couple of, I think, 1 minute of me not having a heartbeat, not having any, yeah, heart function. And during that situation, I remember myself getting up into like a situation where I was leaning on my elbow. So I was laying on an operation table, and from that I felt myself like as if my astral body was moving out of my physical body, and I was kind of going into like that position and looked around, and I saw the operation room. I saw the many screens that they have, because during that surgery you have a lot of screens where you see everything that's happening on the inside, and I saw that very vividly. I could see the whole room, and I heard the doctors talk to each other. I heard the situation. I could feel that they were a little bit stressed because the unexpected happened and my heart stopped for a moment. So I could feel, or I could experience this whole situation, but I felt completely calm, and I had this perception of complete serenity. Like I knew it was me on the table. I could see myself, but I was connected with myself, but also disconnected from myself. Meaning I was above all fear, above all like stress or anything that you could experience in such situation, witnessing yourself going through like a little medical emergency situation. And I didn't feel any fear. It was a very serene feeling. And the image that stuck with me the most was that I took on a perspective of, it's really hard to describe because I can only picture it now with my human brain and only explain it in
Mhm.
human words. But I felt like I was floating to the top, to the right corner of the operation room, and I had this 360-degree view. So it was like I was energy. I didn't have any body, or also not an energetic body. I was just there as presence, and I could see everywhere. I could see all around.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I promise the second half will be even better. If you have been enjoying this conversation and you want to embark on your own self-concept transformation, then download my free self-concept mastery blueprint to get started with your own identity evolution. The link is in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview.
And I was perceiving the situation and looked at myself from the right upper corner of the room. And I just perceived that. And I was observing it and just looking at it without any strong emotions. It was this pure serenity and just me observing how they were working on me. And one moment later, I was like sucked back into my body and I felt like a stinging pain on my leg because they go through the like one of the veins in the legs. And I realized, okay, they gave me like medication to wake me up from this state because it happened at the very end of the surgery when they wanted to pull out the tubes, and then that's when that happened. And in that moment, I realized, okay, I'm back in my body. They like woke me up from the anesthesia. It was just like a sedation, and I was like, oh my god, what was that? And for a couple of years, that was all that I remembered. Like I was a child, I was 9 or 10 back then, and I remembered that moment of being sucked into my body again and waking up. And later on, I told my mom about this, and she was like curious to know what I experienced, but she didn't like give me any ideas about near death experiences or something like that. She wasn't into stuff like that herself back then. She's very much more spiritually open now as well. So I feel like we evolved together.
Because of you.
Yeah. But back then, she was just like, interesting. And then the funny thing was, or the interesting part was that after a couple of weeks, we got the report back from the hospital, and it was documented that I had this little like heart stop moment, so that they had to do CPR, or like not CPR, but had to, I don't know what the medical term is. It's not actual CPR, but they had to do something to
Do
make my
they
heart.
like massage
Yeah,
the
or
heart
like
or
with
something?
I think like they shoot like power through
Oh.
the tubes. I don't know, something like that. And they like electrical impulses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. And then she puzzled it together for herself. Like that was really weird. And we talked about this for the first time, but it wasn't that she was suggesting it. Like it sounds like that now when I talk about it, but she wasn't into that, and she wasn't suggesting it. I didn't really think much of it.
Did you think like when you were, because you said you were above all fear, you weren't in your body, you were pure presence, pure energy. When you were back in your body and you felt the pain, were you a bit like, oh, like what came up for you there?
I don't remember anything like that I thought like, oh, that's sad that I'm back in my body. But I also think that was because I was still so young, and I wasn't able to really reflect on that or understand what was going on, because a couple of years, like in 2023, it wasn't that long ago, I had such situation where I was under anesthesia again, and I had this moment of coming back, and I felt exactly what you just asked me. I felt like, oh my god, like this sucks. But going
Stupid
back to,
body, stupid ego.
yeah, it sucks. Why the physical? No, it's also amazing to be here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but to go back to that situation, all of that, all of what I've just shared, I only remembered that in the full capacity after my open heart surgery. So that was really the moment when I was 19, the big one. That was the moment that really opened all that up to me and made me remember these near death experiences. And that was also when I remembered the one from the ambulance when I was a baby. And it
Wow.
was basically the same situation. I saw myself from the right upper corner. I don't know why it's always the right upper corner. I saw myself from there, and I saw myself as a baby laying in that ambulance. And the interesting part that helped me verify that this was not just me making stuff up as a child, or my brain making stuff up. I could verify, or we could verify in our family back then, that I was able to see what was underneath me, because there was like these baby beds there, the baby is on top, and then there's a second story where you can store like utensils and like medical devices and
Mm.
stuff like that. And on that second floor, or second part of the bed, there was like a blanket that I could describe in detail, and I remember that vividly. I could describe the color, the pattern, the animals on there, and I just saw it in my mind when like after all this information came back, and I wasn't able to see that because it was underneath me. So even if I would have for some reason stored that memory as a baby, I wouldn't be able to know that this blanket was in that area underneath me, and I wasn't able to know the pattern or anything like that, because it wasn't a blanket from my mom or anything I've seen before. It was something from the hospital. So that was interesting, and that made
Yeah,
me think back then, like, interesting.
that is super interesting. And I think this also really speaks to how much we actually store in our consciousness. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the fact that you had this experience and then everything else came back. Like it makes me think of sometimes when I do work with my clients, I work a lot with the subconscious and we go into it somatically through the body. And the shit that sometimes comes
Oh.
up where people regress back to like a baby state, you
Mm-hmm.
know, have memory come up from when they were a newborn in hospital, and that's where their abandonment wound originated, or things like this. It's so crazy. Like that's all inside of us. And, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that's all inside of you. And I don't know, I'm actually really curious, and I feel like we could talk about this for hours because you and I have actually never spoken about like our
Yeah,
belief
true.
systems, but I kind of get the sense that it's fairly aligned. But um I always think like we're actually just like this one great consciousness, you know? And if we really, really tune in, if we're able to do that, which often isn't possible to that extent from our human limited selves, but if we're able to do that, we have access to absolutely everything. And
Yeah.
that is just so crazy to me, but also so magical and mystical.
Absolutely. I totally resonate with that. And I think we tend to carry the memories with us, or the capacity to remember certain things, if they serve this current lifetime. That is what I
Mm,
believe, and what I've learned to resonate with me, that we only, like, even if you think about past life regression or stuff like that, I believe that we had many, many, many past and parallel lives. So remembering all of them wouldn't even make sense in for what we need to know in this lifetime. So I think technically we could access absolutely any information that we wanted, but for this lifetime, there may be some cap on that, that we chose
mhm,
ourselves to only remember the things that are really relevant to this current lifetime, this experience, and for this expansion that we are meant to experience in this lifetime.
mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. I actually just had a conversation with a friend recently where we were, because I had a few years ago, I had some memories, some past life memories come back, and we were talking about it, and she was sharing, and I agree with her on this, that technically, you know, my past lives are your past lives,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's all kind of the same. It's just that different people have access to different lives, but you know, like who's to say that that's not, you know, that like you are me and I am you, and that there's not so much mirroring going on that it's just our human self has to find a limit somewhere so that it makes sense to us. But
Yes.
do you know the short story The Egg? That's
Yeah. Yeah, I know
that's
that.
like kind of the
Mm-hmm.
perception I have when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
And how crazy, like, it's so mind-blowing to think we're having this conversation right now, and technically you are a parallel incarnation of me, and I'm
Yeah.
one of yours, and like the one being, and we are just
Yeah.
communicating and expanding and learning from each other to even like gain more.
Mhm.
Was Isn't that crazy when you think about it?
It's insane. Life is actually mental.
Hmm.
Okay, well, let's go back to the experience. We're going on tangents here, but I love it. So, you had this experience, it brought back all the memories. How did all of this shift the way you saw reality yourself. And what was there a moment when you were like, I can never go back to living life the same way I lived it before this?
Absolutely. So those experiences, or let's say remembering those, because I had them earlier, but when I remembered them, they had an impact on me. And the crazy stuff happened after remembering those. So the experiences themselves were intense, and they gave me like this knowing that there is more than just the human existence. And once we're once we're gone, poof, we're not there anymore. I don't believe that anyway, but it was a real confirmation for me. And what was happening then was that I felt like I was divinely guided. Like the wisdom or the things that I was meant to learn, and the rabbit holes I was meant to go in, they just came to me through different experiences, through books, through things I stumbled upon. It was really, it doesn't sound as intense now when I talk about it, but it was crazy. Like every day I had like a new insight. I got a sudden download, or I realized something about the world, or it was just so intense. I feel like those experiences and me remembering them almost was like the permission slip for my consciousness to really pour in everything that I was meant to remember. And it was at least 1 year of daily intense cosmic downloads, of things coming to me, suddenly getting to know people who were talking about these things with me, even though I didn't even know anyone before that who was interested in stuff like that. And it was just like coming in through every corner, every channel you can imagine. And my spiritual awakening was like skyrocketing. I was so fast in consuming all this new knowledge, and also integrating that a lot, and diving into certain topics that really called me. But it really was coming to me. It wasn't me seeking out that through books that I bought myself, or that I like. It was a very strange situation of the things coming to me, like people lending me stuff, or me finding something on accident, like a video that really expanded me, or a document that I didn't look for. It was just, it felt very divinely guided and very much connected to me remembering what happened during those near death experiences. And the near death experiences, I was reflecting on that a couple of days actually. Most people, I feel like most people who have an near death experience, they go further than that. So I never had that feeling of, okay, I'm meeting loved ones now, or I'm meeting a white light, or there's a white tunnel. I was never that far gone, but I was in that state of complete surrender. And I feel like that unlocked something in my subconscious, or in my consciousness, that gave a higher part of my consciousness permission to let that information in. That's how it intuitively felt. It was very much necessary for me to gain the wisdom I have now, and get the information I needed to grow and become the person I am today. And I'm not done. Like, we're never done. I'm
Mhm.
still like evolving and changing, and I'm not claiming to know everything, or have this amazing wisdom, but um it was just so much information that came in that transformed me in such a short amount of time, that I couldn't ignore the correlation between remembering the near death experiences, experiencing them as well, and the information coming in. So there was a very distinct connection there, and it shifted my, like we're talking about identity shifts, it shifted my
Mhm.
identity in yeah, drastic ways. But it also felt like not really a shift. It felt like coming home to myself and accepting me fully. It more felt like that. It wasn't really an identity shift. It was an identity embodiment, because I always was the kid, or the person that felt out of place no matter where I go, or no matter who I'm with. I have really close friends that completely get me, and that I'm 100% myself with, but I have to admit I have a hard time connecting with people easily, and
Mhm.
I don't feel comfortable being myself if I know people don't fully get me. And this may also be something that I need to work through because of human experiences. Like we all have our things that have an imprint on us. But I also do feel like fully having the cosmic veil lifted and having this bigger picture it just made so much sense. I was like, okay, I have like this permission to embody that weirdness, or that part that others perceive as weird or out there or a little bit crazy, because I've always had that, and it gave me that permission to fully embrace it and to see it as something that I'm meant to know about myself.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I also love kind of just the mirror of how in the beginning of your life you were seeking, you were searching, you wanted to find something. And then after this, things were delivered to you. It's almost
Yeah,
like, the divine is like, okay, she's ready. Here you go.
true. I never thought about this that way, but it's very true. You're right.
Yeah. So beautiful. And what you're saying about the identity shift, I totally agree with that. I love how you phrase that as coming home to yourself. And I think that's usually what it is. This podcast, I was originally going to call it identity shift. And the reason I decided against it was because number one, I was like, this is not quick. Like, yeah, I mean, your story is kind of quick, right? Like it kind of happened and then everything shifted around you without, but I'm sure you needed to integrate and we can talk about that too. But usually, evolving into a new identity or like a different self concept, that's a process. It doesn't happen
Mhm.
overnight. And so that's why I'm often, I don't really like the word shift, although I sometimes use it. But then on another level, also, I really think that when we evolve our identity, change our self concept, it is less of a becoming someone new or something new. It's more of it is more a returning home. It's a getting rid of the layers of limitation
Mhm.
and distorted perception that were never us to begin with, but that we kind of began identifying with for whatever reason, because society told us or because we made certain experiences that told us that we were smaller than we actually are. So I do think like this is really about a removal of all of that and a coming back to who you were always meant to be. So I love that you phrased this as like a coming home to yourself. I would love to know in that, context then as well, what have just been the biggest changes in your life since then? Because I'm sure, a lot shifted around you and you were presented with these, messages and downloads, but I'm sure that took time to integrate and it probably really outpictured. I mean, it definitely outpictured into your reality because it's also the reason you're doing the work you're doing now. You might not be doing this otherwise, or maybe you would, who knows? But yeah, how did your life change and how did you integrate all of this?
Mhm. I feel like it shifted in on every level. So on a more tangible level, I obviously went into that direction of sharing spiritual content. That was my first move into like this business area, or I don't like to call it a business, it's more like a mission, but we as humans, we need to make a living. So the logical solution is to turn it into a business. So me sharing my experiences with the online world was my first step into that direction, and it met a lot of resonance in people, and that made me really see how much transformation it can create when you speak up and when you share about your own experiences. Even though that felt very, very vulnerable back then, I had like in like a couple of years ago when I started sharing about spirituality, I had this private list on Instagram stories, like close friends group on the Instagram
Hmm.
stories, where I shared the things that I didn't dare to share publicly. So today
Right.
I wouldn't ever do that today. But back then I was so like vulnerable in that new expression that I felt like might not say that publicly when I talked about like extraterrestrials and having like
Mm.
contact and stuff like that, because that was a big part as well. I don't know if we want to go there, but
I mean, depends on how much time you have.
That was a big part, and that also actually was the second layer, like the non-tangible shifts that I experienced, like
Mm.
being very connected on a soul level, meeting spirit guides, meeting other beings, meeting higher dimensional beings, and being in very close contact with them and having conversations and them teaching me stuff. Like actually in dream time, I was going through very vivid dreams of me learning new things about the reality that I needed to know to grow and to understand things better and to get my questions answered that I had since I was a little kid. So that was the transformation that was most obvious, the tangible changes in job and expression, and then the more spiritual changes in really getting into contact with other beings.
Wow. So your lens on spirituality and how you, because you were like kind of spiritual before, but you said it was more surface level. So how you approach spirituality and how it evolved for you, that also completely shifted through this experience.
Yeah, it completely shifted. And I always like to say I want to demystify spirituality because when you're
Mm.
not really into it, it looks like a lot of delusional BS that you can get into, right? So if you're
And
someone from the
sometimes it
outside,
can be,
it,
some people do
yeah,
kind of approach it that way, and that's kind of what makes it tricky because then you need to distinguish what is the real deal
that
and
is
what
very
is
true.
people just wanting to believe something that but it's not embodied.
That is very true. Yeah. And yeah, I like to say to demystify it because when you really embody and really look at the bigger picture of how everything's connected, like we talked about it briefly, we are all one. That is like the one truth that is valid for everyone. I believe there's many potentials and many truths out there, and many things can be true at the same time. But the one absolute ultimate truth that I believe in, the only one, is that we are all one because we all come from one source. And
Mm-hmm.
when you begin to understand the bigger picture and the cosmic connections and all of that, it doesn't sound like BS anymore. And I really like to bring that into my work. And I often get these comments when I share about these more out there topics, more cosmic topics. People comment like, what drugs are you on? Or, and I'm okay with that. I understand that. And it's also important that people stay discerning because, like you said, there is people out there who are very ungrounded and they tend to believe whatever and grab onto any belief system that is serving them in some way. So we have to be careful here. But the demystification of that spirituality really helps to understand that we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings and we chose to have a human experience. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
cliche saying, but it's so, so true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of these spiritual concepts, like sadly, they're kind of they're true, but yeah, some people just don't live them. But I think it also what you just shared that people, that you get these types of comments like, "What drugs are you on?" It also speaks to what you shared in the beginning. There's you're kind of like polarizing, right? Like you're not meant to be for everyone, just like, someone else might be for someone else. And that kind of brings it back to how our missions are all unique. And that's kind of the work you do with people now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that like the standard should never be to be everyone's darling for nobody. I feel like that's not serving. And I don't have any problem with being the trigger to someone or the polar opposite of what they think is right. I don't have a problem with that because I still believe that in some way it serves the collective and it serves them as well because they can reflect. And I'm also not claiming to know the absolute truths. I'm just sharing my perspectives. And like I said, many things can be true at the same time. We could talk about the same thing and call it different names because we filter it through different belief systems and different perceptions of the same thing, but essentially we're talking about the exact same experience. So I don't judge anyone who has a different perception or a different
Mhm.
belief or says that what I share or when I talk about the more cosmic stuff that this is completely nuts and that I'm on drugs. I'm okay with that. Like I don't need
Yeah.
to um make anyone believe my truth for it to be true to me and for so many others who resonate and who are meant to experience their experiences in the same way that I do and just have the same lens of looking at the deeper layers of reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I got like some really hateful messages on Instagram the other day, and for my nervous system, it was very jarring. For my nervous
Mhm.
system, I noticed that like all day I was a bit off, and I couldn't really put my finger on why until I reflected, and I was like, oh, that's because this person like insulted you so much, and like, but when I actually sat with it, I was like, oh, I kind of like this because I activated something in them. And it might not be what my intention is with my content, but it stirred something in them, because you're not going to get defensive, you're not going to you know attack someone if it doesn't stir something in you. And one of my past coaches, she would always say, when you trigger someone, you're actually just giving them a free healing. And I
Yeah,
feel like that's often true.
that is very true. And the thing is, it's their task to work with that. Like,
Hmm.
do you externalize it and write a nasty comment, or do you reflect on that and like, and if they're not able to do that, it's just externalizing of things. And that's what I remind myself of when I get comments like that, or when something hits me and it hurts a little bit. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, they just don't know any better, and I actually feel love for them, because I'm like, there is so much room to grow, without meaning that in any arrogant way. I'm just like, I'm sending you love and I hope that you can integrate this, or you can
yeah,
learn from this, or have this experience trigger something in you that actually helps you heal a part of yourself that felt so hurt, or that felt like it was necessary to create pain for someone else.
yeah, totally, totally. And often that does happen. I'm sure you've experienced this too, but I've had so many people over the years who attacked me, and then 2.5 years later, they're like, "Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I get it now."
Hmm.
So, we're all on our own journeys, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel like we could go so much deeper, and I kind of really want to talk about aliens. So I feel like I just need to ask you to come back to talk about
I feel like
that.
that needs
But
a separate episode.
I feel that too. Yeah, like that's one of the spiritual experiences where I'm like, I want that. I've never had that. Where are my aliens? But yeah, before we go into a little closing ritual that I like to do, if I don't know if you listened to any of the previous episodes where I've done this, but I like to ask 3 questions as a little closing ritual. But before we do that, I just want to ask you if there's anything else that you feel like you want to share about your journey that you didn't get to share yet, that I didn't ask about yet.
I just feel like I want to share that what I've taken from all these experiences and like my whole journey, and also feeling inherently different because of my medical condition and never quite fitting in, and always having this kind of isolating feeling because of the things that others couldn't get about me. I just want to send out a message to those who may feel the same, and they may feel
Mm-hmm.
like their biggest challenges are what keeps them disconnected from people, or what keeps them in a bubble of isolation, because I know that feeling very well, especially if you're someone who has like this facade of being a strong independent person, but there's more to that, and there's also like a part that's very vulnerable. I feel like what I've taken from that, and what I would love for everyone who feels the same to take from their own journey, is that whatever makes you feel isolated or different, or not fitting in into certain groups, is usually where your magic is, and where you can really grow and bloom and use that as an advantage of yourself, rather than seeing it as something that you want to get rid of, or you want to adapt, or change about yourself. I think that is the biggest lesson I've taken from all of this, like the permission slip to fully lean into your oddities, into what makes you feel different or isolated, even.
Yeah, that is a beautiful message. That is shadow integration in action, shadow
Yes.
embodiment. actually. Yeah, amazing. Okay, let's go into the three questions that I have for you.
Curious.
Oh,
I haven't
I
seen
think
that when I looked at the other episodes, so I don't know what's
I
coming.
like that. I like that in season one I got to surprise everyone with that
Hmm.
because no episodes were out yet, and now I'm like, some people might know, but it's good that you don't. So I like to ask this question usually from the perspective from a year ago, but in your case, I would love to ask it from the perspective of before your, you know, life altering near death experience or before your awakening, let's say. If the you from before then watched your life today for a day, what would surprise them the most?
I think how confident I am in expressing my spiritual side and how much of a big part that has become in my life, and how much yeah, how beautifully the path has carved itself, because I was always looking for that, and I wouldn't have expected that it would turn out to be this. And I really love looking at what happened.
It was all very divine. Okay, well, the second question is about the present, because the
Hmm.
first question was about the past self. Now we're going into the present. If you were cast in a film as your current self,
Hmm.
what would the genre be?
Oh my God. A documentary, I think.
Hmm.
And first of all, I love watching those about other people. And I feel like, yeah, it would be a documentary, because I would still have, like, even in creating art or creating a movie or some sort of a film, I would feel the need to share my message, because that's just so naturally and essentially who I am. So I feel
Mm,
like I would just want to be who I am and be able to share that to a bigger audience.
I love that.
Is that
Yeah.
basic? I
Spiritual.
don't know.
No, no, that's good. Spiritual documentary.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about the future.
Mhm.
The becoming, what's just, beyond the horizon.
Mhm.
If the next version of yourself, so the version of yourself that you're evolving into right now, because we're always evolving, we're always stepping into newer and newer versions of ourselves. If that version of yourself was a landscape, what scenery would you now be walking into?
A scenery. I think I choose a forest, because I love
I would have been
forests.
disappointed, honestly, if you had said anything else. I was like, if she isn't gonna say forest, I'm like,
A suburban area. No, I'm kidding. A
yeah.
forest that has a beautiful energy of, like, the highest timeline that is possible for humanity right now, and has, I feel like the energy there is very, very connected to earth and nature, but also we use technology in a way that is very in alignment and very aligned with higher the higher good for all. And I really want to walk into that reality, not just myself, but on a collective level. I really wish to see that, and to, for many people, to create a beautiful, or co-create a beautiful future with a lot of positive things and a lot of opportunities and creative projects, and, like, just a beautiful energy, a beautiful timeline of the highest thing possible for us humans right now. That's what I would wish for myself and for everyone to step into, even though it might look a little bit different for them.
Yeah. Wow. That was such a potent, beautiful answer. I actually have goosebumps.
Oh.
And I saw like a vision of something as well. Like I saw a lot of colors. That
Hmm.
was such a beautiful answer. Oh my God.
Amazing.
I feel like that is a great vision to hold. I'm gonna hold that vision too. That would be a beautiful reality that we can all collectively create.
And so important, because we're so bombarded with negativity, so we need to hold up the vibration and the energy of a good timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I I was just I just created a story about this just before jumping on here with you, that I often have people tell me that they don't want to, in my case, like they don't want to work on their self concept any longer because they're like burnt out and they don't want to heal and they don't want to do shadow work anymore. And I'm like, well, but like healing and shadow work and doing this work, that's it's not just the darkness. Like,
Hmm.
where's the fun? We need the fun and the lightness. We need a balance of both. And the only reason we ever go into the darkness is to integrate it and to bring it to wholeness. Like the joy is part of it, the light is part of it. We cannot neglect that.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful coincidence, or not a coincidence. It's a divine intervention. But I had this insight a couple of days ago where I was getting the strong message that I myself need to focus more positively because I'm getting dragged into like the news and you know the drill. And I really got this clear message of focus on like the good things, focus on the positive. You are in a position where you are not directly affected by these things, so don't drag the vibration even lower by worrying and by feeding into the fear. Like be the one that creates something more beautiful and inspire others to do the same. So I think from a different lens, again, it's very much the same message and a similar approach to continue and to express yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I've been working on that too. I've been doing this Kundalini yoga kriya every day recently. And part of it, like every Kundalini yoga kriya has is designed for a specific intention, a specific purpose. And the one that I'm doing is very heart opening, and there's a lot about gratitude. And part of it is that at the end of the kriya, you do a short meditation where you're just like, you know, bathing in gratitude, and you're just like
Mm,
sitting with everything you're grateful for. And I've just been doing it for like a week, and that part alone has shifted so much for me.
I
So
bet. Yeah.
it's such a basic thing, gratitude and like focusing on what's working and the positive, but it does really work.
Yeah. And sometimes when we are so like into far into the journey, we really need to remember the basics again. Like
Mhm.
being in the present moment, thinking positive thoughts, observing your thoughts, practicing gratitude, like all these basic things that we learn at the beginning of our journey. I feel like we forget them sometimes when we are into the
Yeah.
deeper and more potent work, but it's so important to remember those. And I really got that message as well, like this intuitive message of remember your basics and go back into like actively practicing gratitude and stuff like that, because it's so important, not just for you on a personal level, but like just the state of the world needs it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Really beautiful. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
and
you for
sharing
having
your
me.
beautiful energy, your wisdom, all of the things. I will, of course, leave all of your info in the show notes, your Instagram, your membership, anything else you want to share. We'll talk after. But I also just want to give you the space here now to let everyone know where they can find you, how they can work with you, anything else you'd like this audience to know.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think the most straightforward way would to find me on Instagram. I pretty much have everything linked there. I share daily content on Instagram, and I think people can most easily find me on there and find all the other information as well. I do have a free membership as well as a pro membership that is paid. So yeah, just check it out. That's my current offer, and I don't know when this is going to be published, but the membership is always a thing. So I welcome everyone in who wants to check out more of what I've talked about and yeah, learn more about the weirdness.
Yeah, beautiful. And if by the time this comes out, you have other things in store, I will definitely link it in the show notes so we can
Thank you.
include
That's
it
amazing.
all. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, next time we'll talk about aliens.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you for having me. It was so much fun, and I love that you're doing this. It's such a great format to, sh- yeah, collect all these stories from people. Really inspiring. Amazing.
I absolutely love having these conversations because every story really reminds us that you can use any experience for your evolution, not just your breakdown. It also shows us that transformation is never linear. It's personal, it's messy, and it's what makes us human. I'm Lorena Schuth, and this was Identity Evolution. Come and find me on Instagram at Lorena Schuth, linked in the show notes, and DM me and share your key takeaway from this episode with me. I would love to know. You'll also find guest links and details in the show notes if you want to connect more deeply with them. And you'll also find my self-concept coaching program, Recreate Yourself, if you are feeling ready for your identity shift. If this episode stirred something in you, make sure you subscribe and ideally leave a quick review and rating wherever you are listening or watching. This really, really helps more people find these stories of self-reinvention. See you next time.